Hi, this is Stephanie from Atlanta, and this is my Module 4 video assignment about communities. And when we got our assignment, I began trying to wrap my brain to think about an online community that I'm a member of right now, and I'm not really participating in one right now. But when we did our reading in cognitive surplus in the chapter on motive, I was struck by the section about Catherine Stone, a U.S. advocate for women suffering from anxiety disorders, where she was talking about postpartum support groups that were meeting on Meetup. And she said that women going through postpartum depression want and need to talk to other women who are just like them, to share, to see that they are not alone, to see they will get well. And a few years back, I became a part of an online community that I want to share with you. I'm opening myself up to you because this was a difficult time in my life, so I hope that you guys will indulge me just a little bit as I go through this. You see, in my 20s and 30s, I bought the myth that women could have it all, that we could spend the time to work on our careers and defer our family making until later on. What I later found out that definitely after the age of 30, and for sure after the age of 35, having a successful pregnancy is a very, very unlikely undertaking. What that meant for me was that between July of 2001 and October of 2003, I had 5 miscarriages. So my husband and I then went through tons of tests, fertility treatments, and even one failed adoption effort. So that doesn't even come close to touching on what we went through emotionally and even financially during that time. Now, you know it ends well. You know why I talk about my kids so much now. And you know that in 2005 we had a rainbow baby, a rainbow at the end of the storm, and that's Matthew. But it was a pretty dark time in my life, and I was able to connect with a community that was just like me, a community that I want to talk to you about today. And that's this community of pregnancy loss and infertility. And the core interest of this group is generally support, a support system. It's very inclusive, and they use a lot of interesting symbolism words that you'll see. They have a common language that they thread throughout, and I'll talk about that as we go through the presentation today. They talk about sisters in this original post that the creator Lauren used in the founding of the board, the multiple loss board. And she talks about people coming and going through every loss, through every stage of the journey. A couple of years later, she did an update to the post where she talks about this tent where we're all inclusive, women of all ages and different stages, and that they come and go as they need to, or they can stay as they need to. And I thought that was real interesting. I also thought it was interesting that she used the phrase warriors, that it's a battle, and we're here with you on the battle, that we all have a common enemy. So I thought this was all real interesting symbolic language that she used there. So this group became really important to me because during this time, you know, after the second and even the third loss, we were told to go to these local support groups where you could sit around and tell your story. And quite frankly, that was too much for me. Sitting around and telling your story every week with the same people became just really too much. There was a lot that was too much for me at this time. Baptisms, people telling me it was God's will. If you learn nothing else, don't ever say that to anybody who's gone through a loss like this. But so this group, what it offered to me was an ability to find some women who had been through something just like I had. There was no one around me who was like that, and the ability to find this group and become a part of this group was really meaningful to me. There are other groups. This is the National Infertility Association site, Resolve. It's funded by reproductive endocrinologists, but I didn't find the connection, the grassroots sort of support that I got from the other site. And this is another site called Cafe Mom, really similar, and had a lot of support about how to grieve a miscarriage and what the differences were. And while their resources were good, they just didn't have the people that were as supportive as the other sites. So for the purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to focus on babycare.com. That's the site that I spent the most time on. Currently, there are 1,400 members on just the recurrent miscarriage support group. There's 17,000 groups on their site when I looked at it this week. There are 3,200 posts, but 27 times more comments. Obviously, this group is a support group, and that's what they do. They support each other through their comments. They share information about themselves through an introductory post with some background information about themselves and what they're going through. Initially, they usually use a screen name to protect their privacy, but the longer they're on, they tend to expose themselves and share a little bit more. So I've created 3 personas based on the people who actually I either know, or these are kind of combinations of people I know through these sites. The first one is Laura. She's the creator. She manages the site and is involved because of her own experiences, as you might imagine, but she ultimately became a parent, has at least 2 kids. She is a dual income. She's a teacher, and her husband travels for a living. She's a female in her mid-40s, typically suburban, although she likes outdoorsy activities that are family-oriented. And she uses a lot of those key insider words like sisters and angel babies, which are the babies from the miscarriages, or rainbow babies, which is why I used that term about Matthew earlier. She's very empathetic. She's very inclusive. Come into the tent. And she's very protective about the people who come to the site. She's very advanced in her internet ability, and she moderates the comments. Her big thing is she doesn't want anyone to be hurt, even inadvertently, by a comment during this very difficult time, because she's been there, and she knows that that's key to the success of the support that this site offers. And like I said, she joined for herself, but she stays to help others, so she's very altruistic. The second persona is a critic, and that moniker is a little bit difficult for this site because they're not really voting on things or critiquing things. They're more of a participation persona here. They actively are involved in commenting on posts. They always offer support, though they only offer advice when asked or when the poster is asking for advice. They're always on the weekly chats. They offer updates on their own journey freely, which is still underway. They're still trying to have a family. They'll reach out directly to individuals if they feel need their support. They're usually involved in the medical industry in some way, and their husband is in the military. In fact, the real Shannon, who I knew, her husband was deployed during the time we became friends and connected. She's a female in her mid-30s. The Shannon I knew was rural, but she could have been suburban. She was an avid reader and used that book club connection to connect to other people, and she's from a big family, so she tried to extend that family-like atmosphere to her involvement in this community. She's very empathetic and protective, but she's fearless and put herself out there and shared a lot of personal information. And she used the same buzzwords too, including TTC, which is a buzzword for trying to conceive. She uses the internet a lot, again reaches out to people personally. There's a pass the note button on babycare.com which allows instant private messages to be shared if you're involved in a chat or other conversations. She uses this site to help her cope by helping others. Otherwise, she thinks if she weren't busy, she'd be sitting around feeling sorry for herself, especially during her husband's deployment. The challenge is she has to take care of herself and make time for her own grief and the fears of what the future may or may not hold. And I'll give you an example of the Shannon I knew. The Shannon I knew went from talking to me on the official chat rooms to, we actually exchanged personal emails, to actually talking on the phone, to she contacted me and told me she had a gift she wanted to send me and where should she send it, and she understood if she wanted me to send it to work instead of home. What she sent was a handcrafted angel ornament for my Christmas tree for my angel babies. So that's how she reaches out to people, is she crafts and share something personal that she made. The last persona was Lisa, and Lisa is the spectator, and she comes to the site because of something that has either just happened, either bad news, or she's going through something, or something has happened to bring it to the top again. She is likely does not have strong support around her. People just don't know how to be supportive, and she feels very isolated, so she's looking for that support. She's a little younger. She can either be suburban or rural, and she's asking a lot of questions. Her keywords are more in the question form. She typically will say, I'm new here, is this normal, is anybody awake? And a lot of times the Shannons of the world will say, yes, I am, and I'm here to help. She's very vulnerable, so she's not sharing much personal information online. But she's very savvy online and is looking at a lot of medical information so that she can ask her doctor those questions, and she'll ask a lot of questions online too. She'll say stuff like, no one knows what I'm going through, so it's nice to be here so I can talk to other people who are going through this. And the challenge is making sure this online community doesn't become an obsession or a replacement for the other work that she needs to do, grieving or deciding what to do next with her spouse or significant other. So in looking at this community, I think the proportion of spectators, critics, or participants and creators was very interesting. Professor Hong talked about the Nielsen study with the 99:1 ratio and the BBC study with the 23:60:17 ratio. I think the babycare.com community is likely a little closer to the BBC study because spectators come in, but they're not going to stay spectators long because they're actually seeking support, and the only way to do that is to post their story and to respond to others. So they're going to move into that critic participatory area pretty quickly. The other thing is there's more critics in this community because it takes more critics to be moderators to provide that insulation, that moderation, and that protection that they need in communities like this. So I think that's going to take a little more than the Nielsen study indicated. So that's it for my presentation this week. I really appreciate it if you would give me some feedback, and I guess I'll talk to you next week, and that's Mount St. Helens this summer with me and my rainbow baby. Thanks.